Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and I am very excited because I have a returning guest to the podcast, and we have a lot to talk about. And I was just going through previews or some website that was talking about upcoming solicits, and when I saw this, I knew I had to try and get him back on because there is an Event Horizon comic that is coming out from IDW. I was a huge fan of the movie when it came out, and I can't wait to hear more about it. But please welcome to the podcast, Christian Ward. Christian, thank you so much for coming back.
Jimmy, thank you for having me. It's absolutely wonderful to be back. And I can't wait to get into our new event comic.
Yeah. I hadn't heard anything about it before until like right before I reached out to you. I was just I don't know if I was on previews or there's like a couple websites that kind of aggregate the solicits as they come out, and they're helpful for me to figure out like podcast guests to go through and say, oh, who's got stuff coming out that I hadn't, heard about yet. And yeah, when I saw that Event Horizon, I think that's Dark Descent. And when I saw that, I was like, what? Because every once in a while, somebody will put something out on social media like, what property do you think, if you had a chance to do a comic book for? And that's one of the ones I always think of, like Event Horizon. Like, I can't believe that nobody hasn't like touched that world or done something with it. And so when I saw that, and then when I saw that you were involved, I was like, I got to try and get Christian back. But so listeners, we're going to talk about that. The final order cutoff is July 14th. Issue 1 is August 20th. But before we do that, because last time you were on, we were talking about your Two-Face, and I just want to say, man, I just loved it. I thought I really enjoyed it. I collected it as it came out. Of course, I mean, I know this is not a visual medium, but we do sometimes. Brock Byron does sometimes put them on YouTube. But I will say I had to make sure I got the issue 1.
Amazing.
With, that's your cover, right?
It is, yeah.
This one. I got all the other issues here, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was fun seeing Harvey this way, and I always think it's neat when you have like DC has such like a rich history, but you don't forget, like, or not you don't forget, you do forget with so many years when you had writers and artists pitching stuff, and they were mainly making them for like kids, teen boys. They were just like pitching different ideas for different villains. And there's such like a rich history of villains out there, and also ones you can kind of come up, on your own. And, I just thought to be able to use Zsasz and like baby dolls in it.
Yeah.
And, I really liked it. And I love the kind of in-head elements, Harvey against Harvey, but you also see Harvey in the courtroom with this white church. I just really, I really liked it. I thought you did such a nice job.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, the ventriloquist and baby doll and the character of Doubt. That issue 3, I think, was my favorite out of all the issues.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? That was the coolest thing about it. I mean, we talked about this the last time I was on, but when I kind of came up with the idea and I kind of cold pitched my editor at DC, and they loved it. Which, by the way, as I said before, like cold pitching is not a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's.
Yeah.
I was so lucky to sort of like land it, and I think it was just because everyone was so excited. But just to go back to your point about the villains in it, I think that was my favorite joy around writing the book, was that I could basically, by and large, decide who was going to be like the kind of the monster of the week each week, and it was just like, okay, well, who do I want? Who are the villains and the characters that I, that my kind of years of reading Batman have always stayed with me. You know, Reaper was in there from year two, and then my personal favorite, Full Circle. And then you've got, you know, as you mentioned, you've got Baby Doll. You know, and it was such a thrill to give Baby Doll her first, you know, non-cameo appearance. It's the first time she's been in like a DC comic proper. That was incredible. And then just, you know, and Zsasz has always been a big favorite of mine, and be able to sort of like, you know, put my own spin on each character and have them kind of coexisting. And then of course, you know, we I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of tip my hat to, you know, Fabio and even and Haas, who just like, you know, brought their A game. I mean, seeing Fabio draw some of these characters, like every time, it was just an absolute joy. Like, how is he going to draw, you know, Baby Doll? What's Doubt gonna, you know, Doubt was a character I've created with Patrick Reynolds, who's got this very realistic style, and then seeing it was so cool seeing Fabio kind of, who's got a very kind of pulpy, almost cartoon style, a little like, you know, Darwin Cookies esque, him doing Doubt and just nailing it, and it's just like seeing a different side of that character. And I remember when I got those inks in, I sent a sneaky look to Patrick because I knew he'd get a kick out of it, and he was just like, "Oh my god!" Like our boy is like existing beyond us, you know. You know, it was so cool. So yeah, it was. You know, you know, I knew I had those 6 issues. You know, at least those 6 issues, and I just like everyone was just like, okay, who do I want? You know, and you want to kind of create characters and kind of like you want to kind of populate the world with kind of like more characters, so that with the hope that, you know, another writer will be like, oh, I really like Lake, or I really like Doubt, or I really like Guy. I think I could do something with them. And that's, you know, that would be a dream to see those characters kind of go on and have a life without me.
Yeah.
Or even, you know, hopefully one day return to them. But yeah, it was such a joy, and it's a joy hearing how much, you know, not just yourself, but how much other readers have kind of resonated with it. You know, that's you know, that's a big part of why I love what I do. It's kind of connecting with readers, and just, you know, I don't do this. I don't do this just because, you know, it's not just a living. I really enjoy wanting to kind of entertain people and take people on a journey, and to know that that journey's been pleasurable. I mean, that's just soul food right there.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm glad that the response to it has been good.
That's been
Hopefully
crazy.
you've yeah. Um, I also like there's a couple of things in it where, because you're dealing with kind of like Harvey is locked away, the bad side of himself. And we've seen that kind of done before in like TV or movies or certain things. But I there's a great, not to spoil too much, but there's a great couple of scenes where like well, I'll say bad Harvey is like kind of having a conversation with uh the in-head version of Maroney, and like they're having a conversation, and like, but I love how Maroney's just like, yeah, man, I don't, I'm just in Harvey's head. Like he doesn't know anything. He's just trying to make me more interesting. And it's like, oh, there's always like an awareness of kind
Yeah.
of like this mental head prison thing that bad Harvey is kind of trapped in. And I kind of loved all of those elements to it. I just thought the the idea in this that side of Harvey was kind of always there, created, locked away,
Yep.
and it wasn't just that like Maroney with the acid created Two-Face. It was always there, and that just was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back that really let out like that side of Harvey. And yeah, I just thought all of those elements were great. I love the character of Lake. I just
Oh,
thought
she's so cool. Yeah.
what a wonderful addition. Um and yeah, I know when we had first talked about it and talked about the creative team, and then I, was reading them as they were coming out, and then I got a little bit behind, but I wanted to go back and look at them before we talked today. And as I picked up, I don't know, maybe like issue issue 2. It's the issue. Yeah, it's got to be issue 2. It's when
I know
Lake is in the
the
club.
nightclub. Yeah.
It's when Lake's in the nightclub, and I'm like, damn, this lettering is good. Who
Yeah.
lettered this? And I'm like, oh, Haas, of course.
And I've got to like, I've said this before, but I've got to give him props here, because it's all about. I'm a big believer in making sure everybody gets their flowers. So in the script, I had like Lake moving around in the nightclub, and I kind of said to Fabio that we didn't have to keep to a kind of traditional panel structure for this, but the main kind of narrative thrust of this page is she's going to move through the nightclub, and as she moves through, she's going to lip read. And she's scanning people and she's lip reading.
Yeah.
And then in the lettering, I literally just had each panel or each suggested panel was going to be like one word, and it was her putting that. And as you read it, you put a sentence together. So anyway, Haas went away, and he spoke to some deaf friends of his, and basically he was, how does lip reading work? And they basically sort of explained to him that it's this strange game of kind of like half guessing and using context to kind of like so it could be that or that, but the context means it can only be that, and it's this like kind of almost like Sudoku-esque puzzle of them kind of like putting it all together. I mean, it's just remarkable, really. And what's even more remarkable was that Haas came and he kind of sent us this page with this idea that he wanted to kind of like visualize through his lettering. I mean, he's the master in the game. He wanted to visualize how that process works. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many people like reached out to me on Instagram or League of Comic Book Geeks or on Blue Sky, and were just like, "This is amazing," And every time I was just like, "It is," but like, direct your direct your praise to Haas, because like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's why, like, I mean, I'm not working with him on Event Horizon, unfortunately, but every comic where I have a say on like who the letter is, like Haas. Like I always feel really bad because like I'm lost. Like I just presume he'll do it, and a number of times it's like, "Oh, you're doing this book next week with me." That's fine, right? I presume that's fine, right? And every time it's like, "Oh yeah." But like I'm sure he's just like, "Oh, one, I haven't got time," and really we've worked enough. Like let me work with other people. But I'm just like, he's a genius,
Yeah.
absolute genius.
That section in particular. I mean,
Yeah,
all of it is great, but that section in particular. So yeah, I really loved it. I loved kind of seeing the courtroom stuff, the white shirt stuff.
Perry
I love.
Mason.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
very much so. I kind of I it, and it is funny because going from the district attorney to what he's doing now, and there is also kind of a comic element to it of
mm,
Harvey trying to convince himself that what he is doing is going to get
yeah,
early on he's going to get himself in like back in the good
yeah.
graces. Like
I mean,
he's still
yeah,
murdering
yeah.
people.
I mean, like, it's so funny. Like, a lot of people, there was a few people they were a bit upset with me at the end. No spoilers, but they were a
Yeah,
bit upset with me at the end. And I was, I get it because, like, they love Harvey. They like kind of love Harvey like he's a real person, like, good Harvey.
sure.
And I do, but also like the big drive of the book, and like, there was a reason why we start with Brad Harvey narrating it. Like it's always his story. It's always his story.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's even in that first issue, he's like Bad Harvey's just like, what are you talking about? You like Bad Harvey's just like, you're crazy. This isn't gonna happen. Like all the
yeah,
way through, it's like, this is not gonna happen.
yeah,
And I really love that kind of like, I think kind of it's kind of there's absolutely nothing wrong with characters having self-delusion and having the same kind of flaws that everyday people have. We delude ourselves all the time, or pretend that it's going to work out where we know it's not. And I really wanted to kind of have Harvey feel like a real person, and he's really striving for something, even though subconsciously, and his subconscious has got a name. It says this isn't going to happen.
right,
So
yeah,
that was really important to me. That was, it's. I always knew I was writing, and again, spoilers for people who haven't read it, but I always knew I was kind of writing a tragedy. You know, and I had, there were plans. Like I had to submit what Arc 2 was because, if we'd done really well and we'd blown the doors off sales wise, we would have that Arc 2 would have been greenlit, and alas, it wasn't to be. But there was like, as far as that those 6 issues were exactly what I planned. They were
Mhm.
all what were in the pitch, and then we I kind of like there is a kind of like there is more there. And who
Okay.
knows,
Yeah.
if the trade does very well, it's always you never know in this game. You never know.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm gonna be pointing people towards it when the trade comes out
You
because
do
I
it.
can't wait to
Yeah.
see it collected. I thought it was great. I not just I love the story, and yeah, there's just some fantastic visuals in it. Especially the end of issue 5. I love that scene of Harvey looking up, the "I'm listening," and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
next closing arguments. I just thought that whole that last page of issue
Yeah.
5 is such a nice touch.
So cool. And when Fabio sent that in, we were all like, like, that's so cool. And that's why I loved working with Fabio. It was just like
Yeah.
everything was kind of like it was always Gotham through a different lens. Like character like Croc through his lens wasn't quite the Croc we've seen before, and Zsasz wasn't quite the Zsasz we saw before. And I think kind of again not visual meaning, but I'm a big fan of like the animated series, and you can see a lot of
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I
love.
see that in the back.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in the book, and I think kind of the reason why we kind of selected Fabio was because it's kind of he was almost like a halfway ground between, you know, what you would expect in a kind of DC comic
Mhm.
and kind of like animated, Batman animated series. He's like this halfway point in a really cool, really umami way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I think it worked really
yeah,
well for
thank
the
you.
story, and it looks really great, but, um.
And Ivan's colors were like, like it was funny because when we started, I had such a. I mean, I think it's funny. Like, I'm very offhand when it comes to artists. Obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm an artist initially, but I don't really get involved with kind of like people's art or kind of like micromanaging. That's like that's for them to do. I don't do that. But I'm really particular with color. And I find it really hard not to be particular with color. And I remember Ivan, like, I had this really clear idea of how we would distinguish between the like real Gotham and the Mind Prison. And I really
Uh-huh.
wanted to, I didn't want to have to every time, because I knew there was going to be like every now and again we'd just have a panel. So I was just, I don't want to have like, I don't want to have to do an establishing shot every time I go into the Mind Prison. We need to have a short visual shortcut so that when the readers are reading it, they know immediately where we are.
Yeah.
And it took us a while, and like all my notes were like, just turn it up a bit more, just turn it up, turn it up, and then like, and once he got it, once he kind of like understood what I was,
Yeah.
what I wanted, and what I was seeing in my head, like my God, he was like flying. I mean, like my God, and when he was sending in like, particularly issue 4, which was our kind of trial of Harvey Dent. I
Right.
mean, some of those colors. Like, I'm really hoping. I mean, it's obviously we've just had the Eisner nominations for this year, but it would be. I think it would be. He's so deserving of a nod, and and Haas, and Fabio, maybe me as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I
But yeah, it's I've been very blessed with working with very talented people in this industry, and what is so wonderful and so um just so lovely is that people bring their A game to like the books that I'm writing, and that's just, you couldn't ask for a better, you know uh, vindication of like kind of what you're trying to do.
Right.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I am definitely gonna, like I said, point people to to the trade because I really love the story. But
Thank you.
so now let's turn for the main event for
Yes.
this podcast, Event Horizon
Yeah.
Descent. So this is IDW,
hmm
and I mean, I'll just say, I said it at the beginning a little bit in the opening, but I was so excited when I saw this. I haven't watched Event Horizon in quite some time, but I saw it in the theater when it came out in 1997. I think I would have been a senior in high school, and I remember going and as a kid growing up, I hated horror movies. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but I went to and like so when I was in grade school, like maybe like 5th or 6th grade, so like 11, 12 years old, I went to some these they had courses at a local like college for like grade school kids. You could go, and they had all kinds of different things you could go for the day. There was a bunch about this was the 90s, so there was a ton about the environment, things along those lines. But everyone else that I was with was going to one about monsters, and I hated any type of horror movie. But I didn't want to be the only person going to like an environmental one, so I went to the monster one, and it was all about like how we create monsters and then how like from books and literature and then into movie monsters. So that, they were talking about Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. And it kind of like demystified like the scariness of the horror genre as a
Oh,
kid. And then I
yeah.
started watching everything I could get my hands on. I just like I went through all the Halloweens, all the Nightmare on Elm
That's
Streets, all
so
the Friday the
cool.
13th,
Yeah.
like older horror films, and then I just really got into them, like ones from the 70s, 80s, and then into the 90s. So when something like Event Horizon came out, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
kind of like a cosmic horror, which, I mean, other than there was Alien, and but this seemed different, at least in terms of what I had seen, like because it was kind of science fiction. This idea of this like ship that had been missing for 7 years, and it had this special gravity drive,
Yeah.
and I was totally enthralled by it. I loved the cast. I love Sam Neill. I loved Lawrence Fishburne. I think Jason Isaacs is also
Yeah. He is. Yeah.
also in it. And I think for years afterwards, because like we didn't have the internet for a while, I always wondered if that scene where the Lawrence Fishburne kind of saves the one guy as he floats out of the airlock, if that was possible. Um, but I loved it, loved the movie, and so to think that there is now going to be an IDW, comic book that you're involved in, I was just like, I want to know. I want to know everything about it. I want to talk to you about it. I want to know how it came about. I wanted to know if this was something that you were a fan of or just kind of like a job that came along. And yeah, so Event Horizon Dark Descent. Tell me all about it.
Here we go. No pressure, right? I mean, this is the
Right.
thing. This is the thing with this, but like, my God, so going from Two-Face, like, there was a lot of pressure on Two-Face. He's a beloved character, and I knew I had to do it right. But like, I was really confident with Two-Face. I just knew. I was like, I know that character like so well. I was so, I was not cocky but confident. But this man, whoa, the pressure is on. Like, I am very aware of the fan base. I'm very aware how beloved it is. And just and here's the thing, like, so I've watched it quite a lot recently. I watch it, I'm like, before I did the kind of like the pitch, I watched it properly and kind of like, with my kind of really intense kind of like, okay, I'm studying this now. And as I've been writing the scripts, I've kind of been watching scenes here and there and just kind of like, reminding myself of the tone and the flavor and everything. And what's really interesting about Event Horizon is that you can't quite put your finger on what makes it good. It's this weird ethereal kind of like this strange combination of things, and just this alchemy of just like it just worked, and there were things that were being put together that hadn't really been put together before. I mean, like you, I saw it. I saw it at the cinema. I was in my. It was 97, I believe it came out,
Yeah,
and
1997.
yeah, yeah. So I would have been. I would have been either. See, I thought I was 19, but I'm not. I was older, so I was either 20 or 21 when I saw it. So a
Okay.
young adult. And the funny thing was, the reason why I went to see the film wasn't because I mean I was a big film guy, still am, and me and my mates we went to the cinema every Friday without fail to see the film of the week, whatever we chose would be the film. So and that was the film for this week. But one of the big choices wasn't just because it was like a sci-fi horror. It was because I was a big Orbital fan who kind of contributed to the soundtrack. So it was really about wanting to kind of like hear like a favorite musician group of mine, like what they would do with a score. And and I still remember sitting there and watching the kind of like, as you zoom down the black hole and the kind of the techno thumping and just thinking, I've never seen anything like this. Do you know what I mean? I've never seen this energy and this kind of like this clash between something really contemporary and then because Cosmic Horror always feels really old to me and really ancient and really beyond any kind of comprehension. And I
Right.
think, I think that's the thing that I'm working very hard and thinking very carefully about trying to not necessarily emulate it because I don't want our book to be a copy, but it has to feel right. It has to feel in keeping so that, when people read it, even though it's in a different medium, they are going to feel satisfied. They're not going to feel cheated. I'm treating it with a lot of respect. Uh, I'm not I'm not trying to I'm not trying to kind of undo anything. I'm not trying to kind of like my goal really is to kind of add, I want someone to read this book because we're doing a prequel. So this is set before the film. This is a story about what happened to the original crew. And I want people to read it and then go back and watch the film, and the film's even better. It will work as a companion piece to the film.
Right.
But in regards to kind of like how it came about, I was at New York Comic Con last year, and I'm good friends with Heather Antos, who edited Bloodstained Teeth, and we went out for lunch one day, and she's obviously a senior editor at IDW. And she was just like we were just talking and kind of shop talk that wasn't like kind of public knowledge at that point. And she was just, oh yeah, IDW we've just got a load of new licenses. And we were talking, and I was just, oh, what have you got? And she kind of listed a few, and some of these have been, you know, announced already. And then she was just going, oh, and I think it was the last one she said, and she got, oh, and Event Horizon, and I was literally like this. I was
For
like,
for our podcast listeners, Christian just did a very perfect I'm about to take a bite of a sandwich double take.
and I was like, I've got to like, if you're after a writer, I have to write that. Like it
Yeah.
was so like, I've got to do that. That what? Are you joking? And then basically cut to I think it was late February or March. Um, an editor called Nick Nino from IDW sent me an email and was just like, oh, have you got any interest in writing an Event Horizon comic? And I don't think I've ever replied. Nobody. You want to be a bit cool, right? You want to be like, yeah, well, I'll check the schedules, But I was like, yes, yes, capitals, like exclamation mark, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And then we were off to the races, and he was just like, with basically the way it worked is like once I was on board, what I had to do then, like it wasn't like um I suppose I would say it was my job to lose. So I had the job, and then I had to kind of like pitch because it was all about then going to Paramount and the original screenwriter of the film. And convincing them that whatever my take was the right take, and that
Okay.
it was something that they were really excited about and wanted to be like, yeah, this is cool. So basically, I had a weekend where I had to pitch and do a proper pitch and story breakdown and kind of like full issue by issue breakdown, what exactly is going to happen, who are the characters, what's going to go on. And yeah, so I like Friday night, I kind of booted up the film, watched the film for the first time. And I mean, I think I've seen it like kind of when it's on streaming, I'll have watched a little bit, or if I've caught half of it on TV, but I'd never sat down and like rewatched it, like actively watched it rather than just
Mm-hmm.
passively watching it.
Right.
And yeah, so I watched it and it was so beautiful. Like within, it was quick. The idea, it was quick. I was like, okay, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly what I want to do with it. I know exactly what sort of things I want to discuss. I know exactly how I'm gonna kind of like, link it to the film and more importantly, I know exactly how to make this surprising in the best possible way. And so I wrote up the pitch. I sent it to Nick. He freaking loved it. IDW loved it. They sent it to Paramount, and for people out of the industry, kind of like what normally works with licensee projects, and it's always different, depends on the license. Some licensees are more stricter than others. Um,
Right.
you'll very often you'll get notes, and the notes you'll get won't really be about it as a comic. It's more about how whatever the license is perceived, or whether you can't really do that with this license. It's not that flexible, or whatever. Um, and so we were fully because and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the pitch, the comic really takes some swings, and one of the swings that it takes is now known, which I can talk about shortly. But we were kind of expecting to have some pushback and
Okay.
be like, well, this is, you can't do this, you can't do that, and but in the meantime, I completely fallen in love with this story that I wanted to tell, and I was just like, I can't change this. Like, there's this like, I would be like really heartbroken if I can't tell this story.
Yeah.
And I felt like if they were to come back and be like, this isn't going to work, and you can't do this, you can't do that. I was saying to Catherine, my wife, I was going, I don't know what to do. Like I'd already preempted that was going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do because like I really want to do this, but now I feel like it will be a lesser version of what it could be. And anyway, we got like the feedback from Paramount and from the screenwriter, and they loved it. They like,
That's awesome.
and I was just like, and my editor was like, this is incredible. And so yeah, we've been off to the races. And it's
What?
been the go
No,
on.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
So yeah, but we've just been, the enthusiasm from Paramount, the enthusiasm from the screenwriter. In fact, Nick was at a screening of the film recently in LA, and the screenwriter just happened to be there doing a Q&A, and like even they're enthused about what we were doing. So yeah, I'm still, I'm optimistic that the fans are going to like it, but
Yeah.
I will be like, I hope they'll like it, and I've written it with a lot of love and a lot of passion, um, and I hope they like the left turns that we take, and see them for what they are, and I'm sure a lot of them will, but
Right.
yeah, so it's really cool. I'm really having a blast. It's really cool to kind of, it feels like a real left turn after Two Face. Like it's a completely different book.
Oh yeah. I,
Uh,
I mean, I only know a few details that I've read, um, from some other, but I think it was AI, was it AIPT,
yeah, yeah.
had some info on it. So I haven't even, um, read too much about it other than that it was a prequel. Um, but yeah, was it so was part of your story idea the like the prequel, or was that part of the brief? Like we're going to do a prequel. We don't
And
want to.
yeah, it wasn't set in stone, but it was
Okay.
that they were definitely like, this is kind of when they came to me, they were like, this is what we're thinking. That this
Yeah.
kind of makes sense, and they were right. It's I mean, I can't say too much, but like, I you know, we're very excited about this. IDW are very excited. Paramount are excited. If retailers are excited for it, if readers are excited for it, there's going to be there'll be more. There'll be
Yeah.
more.
I mean, it's almost,
Mm.
and I can't think, unless somebody did some type of like, you know, tabletop like role playing game or something. I can't think of
Yeah.
anything else. I mean, like, if somebody is aware of it, they can correct me. But I can't think of anything else that has been done with this, like any other type of expansion of this world. And it's been what, 1997, so it's been
30
almost
years. It's almost 30
30
years. Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And Philip Eisner, I think, is the
That's right.
screenwriter who did the screenplay, and I think it was Paul W.S. Anderson who had directed it, who
Yeah.
hadn't really done too much before
He
he had
Mortal
directed
he
Event
done Mortal
Horizon.
Mortal Kombat was his first film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just always liked um I mean, I always liked the design of the
Yeah. Oh
ship.
yeah.
I always like, Alien is known for the like it looks like blue collar workers like on a ship. Like, Alien's not the world of like Star Trek. It's like these are folks just kind of like doing a job. It just happens to be in space. But I felt like Event Horizon kind of had a very interesting mix of what we would see in terms of people out in space trying to recover something, but also like once you get into the more fantastical, like horror elements of it, like there's, this like strange Gothic architecture
Yeah.
design to it
Wild.
as well. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what the Rotten Tomatoes score of the film is, but I just always loved it. I always kind of loved um just the idea that we kind of the idea of we invented something and then it worked pretty much how it should, but what came after was, absolute terror. And
Yeah.
and just like that bit of like, well, what happened to it? Is this another dimension? Is it an actual hell? Like,
Mhm.
all those kinds of like questions that you now, I guess, get to
Yeah.
explore with,
You
I
know,
think
I
Tristan Jones is
That's
doing the
right.
art.
Tristan
Yeah.
Jones is doing the art, and he's
Who's
killing
worked
it.
on Aliens before, like, he's
So
done Alien comics, right?
perfect choice. So we got
Yeah.
Tristan Jones, who's been away from comics for a bit. He's making his big comeback, and then we've got Pip Martin, who's a kind of up and coming colorist here in the UK. She works with Jacob Phillips quite a bit, and I think she flats for Jacob Phillips and Sean Phillips, but she's working on full colors for Jacob Phillips, like Jacob Phillips stuff, and she's incredible. And seeing, again, going back to me being very particular about colors, seeing her colors with Tristan's art was like revolutionary. Everyone was just like, "Holy shit, this is so cool." But yeah, it's the kind of the gothic. We're kind of treating kind of the ship, and Tristan's treating the ship. His architecture, sense of architecture is superb, but we're treating it almost like this cathedral in space.
Okay.
It's this very gothic, very kind of Aliens feels very industrial,
Yeah.
but there's an ornateness to the Event Horizon that doesn't make any sense, really. Like, why is it so ornate? Like, why is it so like? I mean, the outside of it literally looks like a haunted. It looks like the haunted mansion from Disneyland.
From
Do you know
Disney,
what I
yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
great with the lights around the, like, why has he got the name with the lights around it? It's crazy, and I love it. Um,
Yeah.
and we're really leaning into that, and to go back to your point about where do they go, that's the fun of like what I'm getting to play with now. I mean, there's been this you know, a lot of people talk about, because of the infamous blood orgy, this sequence that was so terrifying and gory, you know, you know, practically destroyed. Well, and we're going to have a little bit of that in the book, but because of that, it had this. It was kind of referred to as Hellraiser in space. And then, being a big Clive Barker fan, like I couldn't help but lean into that. I was okay. Well, I'm going to give you that, you know. And so we've already kind of revealed that, because it's a comic book, you can kind of lean into comic book tropes a little bit more, and you can be a little bit more comic booky, and kind of embrace the form that you're telling the story in. You know, I was just
Hmm.
like, I'm going to give you a villain. We're going to have an actual physical villain, you know, and he's not going to be he's not the xenomorph. He's not going to be stalking through the corridors and picking people off one by one. You know, this is very much in keeping with the tone and the cosmic horror qualities of the original film. So we have Paimon in the comic, which many people might know from another Paramount film, Hereditary. It's not a crossover, but I am kind of mining the same classical literature and classical kind of text
Okay.
as as that film did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, which I've done a lot of reading of kind of like the Divine Comedy and Dante's Inferno, Nine Circles of Hell. You know, I, we're going for the kind of Renaissance and the kind of Gothicness that the ship suggests, the story ship.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I mean, those are all things that I, very much, enjoy in terms of like horror and the work of Clive Barker, which I got into, of course, when the Hellraiser and the Cenobites, when I was going through my earlier, let's watch all the horror films I missed. Um, yeah, but also, Dante's Inferno and is uh, something that I always enjoyed. I think it was also because there's a part of me, this is a little separate than horror stuff. I always kind of like the idea of something, the idea of heaven or hell or anything really supernatural where
Mhm.
we try and, you know, uh we try and define it in terms of like human terms, and that
Mhm.
can be played beautifully and philosophically in Dante's Inferno, or you can take something that like Terry Pratchett would make into a comedy, where
Yeah.
you add like where there's a bureaucracy to hell,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or heaven. So yeah, I can't wait. I'm just so excited that there's going to be, more of this. Um, I can't wait to see what the team does with it more so than
Oh,
anything.
that's so
I
good.
just want to. I think there's just enough in terms of the breadcrumbs and what happened to the original crew. There's never like an explicit answer, which I kind of think is part of the fun of Event Horizon.
Well,
But to now
yeah, yeah, and
but to now kinda do that and to think you get to do whatever you want with it and explore that world and, you know, I like that you t we're not gonna give you another Event Horizon. There was a kind of a certain magic to that movie, but we're gonna give you something like adjacent and a little bit, give you something kind of different. And we're not trying to recapture something. We're going to expound on this
yeah,
world and put your stamp on it. That's exciting
100%.
to me,
Oh,
you
thank
know?
you, 100%. And it's funny, I sort of said that this was very different from Two Face, but in one way, it's not. I mean, like, not that I'm the first writer to inject kind of psychology or kind of humanity into characters, of course not. But like, that's something that's really important to me, and I'm approaching every character in Event Horizon with the same kind of attempt for integrity as I did with Two Face. Everyone's got their flaws. Everyone's got their what do they want, what do they need, what are they gonna get,
Yeah.
and really like kind of and like some of the characters obviously Killpack is in the one of the main characters of the comic, and Killpack is the captain that we see with his eyes out,
Right,
like
right.
like
Yeah.
in the famous when he's spewing his Latin. in the kind of distress video, and like that was, I was like, well, who's that guy? But what's taking him to that? And what is he experiencing? What is he trying to do? And Sam Neill's character, the Doctor Weir, like, what's his deal? There's so much to play with. And just like with Two-Face, I'm really living with these characters, and they kind of feel very real to me, and very like I'm very protective of them, which is really bad because I don't need to tell you that it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
You've seen the film,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
but that's interesting, right? To kind of
Right.
write something. How do you walk that line of kind of like that's so dark, but also, I don't want to explain everything, I don't want to kind of like completely reveal like all the secrets and the mysteries, because as we've said before, part of Event Horizon's lore, our lore, I should say, is the fact that it's so kind of like ethereal and you're not quite sure what's happened. So it's really important to me that, you know, th- I'm sort of saying this is kind of what's happening, and but there's still this greater sort of sense of what the hell is happening,
Yeah.
in what I'm doing. But
Right.
it's proven quite the ride.
I can't wait. And I mean, yeah, and the crew, that gets there to investigate the Event Horizon, like it's pretty clear early on something terrible has
Yeah,
happened, but
yeah,
to then see how whatever that thing is, whatever was done when that gravity drive was turned on, and how it affected the crew that was not expecting it. Right?
yeah,
They were not expecting this result, and to kind of tap into the psychology of those characters and what is this thing that we have seen, what it did with the Event Horizon, but how does it affect that first crew, and maybe learn a little bit more about, what it is, or what its origin is, or maybe, learn something new about this world. And I'm just very excited for it. I think this is
Thank you.
a phenomenal idea. I'm
Thank you.
shocked that, like, there wasn't something like this already done in like 2003 or 4, but good for you.
Jimmy, they were waiting for me. What can I say? I wasn't available back then. Now I am.
Well, I'm glad they waited. I cannot wait.
Thank
But
you. Thank you.
Christian, thank you so much for coming back on the
You're welcome.
podcast. I'm just so excited. I love Two-Face. I'm just such a huge fan of your work. I mean, I love your artwork. I have plenty of Christian Ward covers, um, that I keep from different comics. You did one for. I just want to say, I don't know if I said this last time on the podcast, so just in case I didn't, you did one for Homesick Pilots that is just like my
Oh,
absolute
thank you.
favorite.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, so I'm a big fan. I'm just so excited for this. I think it's a perfect time to hit in August. This can be kind of like a slow time, and now August 20th, I have something to look forward to. So listeners, Event Horizon. If you're listening and you have not seen Event Horizon, go watch Event Horizon. Get ready. July 14th is the final order cutoff. You know what that means. We got to make sure that your order is in. Let your local shop know before July 14th that you want Event Horizon Dark Descent in your pull box, and issue number 1 is going to be there on August 20th.
That's right. And I will say, actually, you just said, like, go and watch the film. I was very careful when I was writing this that if you haven't watched the film and you're completely new to this, you will still enjoy it. Like there will be a kind of like there will be a pleasure to you coming into this. I catch you up really quick. I let you know what's going on just enough that new readers completely welcome, and then after you've read the full series, you can experience the film in a way that people like myself and yourself, Jimmy, that we would never have experienced it that way. That's also quite a cool way to experience this whole ride. Comic first, then film.
Yeah, you know what, I agree with that too. Like if you're interested in film, yeah, go and see the film. I really do enjoy it. But that is a good point, Christian, because that is kind of like a fun way. Um, I'm a Star Wars fan, and especially I like hearing from people who like never experienced Star Wars growing up, and then watch the film in chronological order
Yeah, yeah,
rather than theatrical release, and like see how their like experience was different than me, who watched each one as
yeah.
they came out. So yeah, the idea of like reading Dark Descent, getting those issues, and then kind of living with those characters, seeing what happens to them, and then at the end of it, picking up and say, all right, I just finished the comic, and now I'm starting a movie where it's 7 years later, and they've
Yeah,
now
yeah.
someone has the event horizon has reappeared, and seeing, what happens from there. That is also a very unique experience. That is another fun way to kind of
Yeah, definitely.
experience this world. So,
Definitely.
Christian, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Jimmy.
am so
Thank you.
excited that you came back on. I'm very excited for
Cheers,
um,
man.
Event Horizon. So, listeners, rate and review us. Say nice things on social media about us. It is a big help. Shout out to my brother Bobby, the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes, and he buys lots of comics too. So, shout out to Bobby. And listeners, thank you so much for listening. Yeah, I will see you next time.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Thank you.